Hi, welcome to Lesson 2 of Evaluating Liquidity. So, last lesson we did look at assessing liquidity, which means liquidity refers to the ability of business to meet its short-term debts as they fall due. We went on to look at that any assessment of liquidity should begin by analysing the level of liquid funds available. We looked at the working capital ratio and the quick asset ratio and the cash flow cover as tools of assessment. Now, we did talk about how we should have a guide that the working capital ratio and the quick asset ratio should be at least 1:1. It is possible for the business to meet its debts as they fall due if it's below 1:1, so they actually don't have much bank or money in the bank or debtors owing to them. They might actually not have much stock on hand either, but the next thing we'll look at is analysing the speed at which the liquid resources become available. So we can use the following tools of assessment for the speed. So stock turnover, debtors turnover and creditors turnover assess efficiency, which is the ability of the firm to manage its stock, debtors and creditors. The stock turnover has the formula of average stock times 365 over cost of goods sold. It basically assesses how effectively the firm has managed its stock by calculating the average number of days it takes to convert stock into sales, which means that usually it's the faster the better, unless it is significantly faster than the industry average. So we want to sell certain things very quickly, but if we look at other businesses and they're selling it at, say, 25 days and we're selling at 10 days, we might reflect and think, hey, something's not right. Perhaps our prices are too low and we may need to reevaluate. Similarly, we don't want the stock turnover to be too slow, and this is more the more common problem that businesses have, which means they're taking a large number of days to turn stock into sales. So if the industry average is 30 days and our business is taking 40 days, this means that the business may not be generating sales quickly enough to generate cash inflows. This will in turn decrease liquidity, which means that the ability to meet short-term debts worsen. But of course, we need to focus on what the business sells, and you need to compare yourself with similar businesses. It's obviously quicker to sell food like fruits because it does go off over time, compared to selling larger items like selling a car, which would take longer. Ways to improve or to manage our stock, some strategies would be to determine an appropriate level of stock on hand. So if we find that we are taking too long to sell our stock, we might be holding too much stock, so that's why it's taking so long to sell out. Maybe we shouldn't hold as much stock. Obviously, you can't hold too little stock as well. I mean, it would make sense to hold, to have a really good, if you look back to the formula, to have a really good stock turnover, you could simply hold less stock. If you're a newsagent and you only sell 2 exercise books, of course it's quick to sell out. But then you wouldn't be making much money and you'll be losing out on sales. People will be coming in wanting to buy exercise books and you sell out really quickly. So it's really important to determine an appropriate level of stock on hand. It's also important to maintain an appropriate stock mix, so you have a good variety of stock. That means stocking more of the popular items and less of the unpopular items. Rotating stock, so if you're selling perishable goods such as milk, you want to rotate and make sure the older items are in the front, so they sell out first, and the newer items at the back. Make sure the stock is up to date, so make sure you're not selling things that's out of fashion or expired. And promoting the sale of complementary goods. That means that if you are struggling to sell shampoo, you might want to decrease the price of conditioners because usually they complement each other. Next thing, we're going to look at debtors turnover. So we have average debtors times 365 days over credit sales. This measures an average number of days it takes for a business to collect cash from its debtors. So again, usually the sooner the better, because this means that the business can be collected sooner for the business to meet its short-term debts as they fall due, improving liquidity. So it makes sense that the sooner we get money from our customers, the sooner we can pay our own debts. If we find that the debtors are not paying us back in time or soon enough, We might employ some of these strategies. We might use discounts for quick settlement. So if we don't already offer a discount, we might offer them a discount so they're encouraged to pay us sooner. We might not be invoicing promptly enough, so we might give them the goods, but we don't give them the invoice at the same time. If they don't have the invoice, they're not inclined to pay us in time. We can conduct extensive credit checks. That means that before we decide we make a credit sale, we'll do a check on the debtor and make sure they have a good credit rating, so they have a history of paying people back on time, and then we decide, okay, we'll sell to you. We should send reminder notices, so more often than not, debtors don't pay their debts because they've simply forgotten. So it's important that if you give debtors 30 days to pay and it's exceeded 30 days, that you promptly send them a reminder notice, and then they will remember and pay you back. More seriously, if they have exceeded their credit terms for a longer period of time, or they're ignoring your reminder notices, you can then threaten to take legal action. You can hire a debt collection agency, or you can simply threaten to not provide credit in the future. And also it depends on the amount that is owing, and if these things don't work, and then it becomes a bad debt that needs to be written off. Looking at credit terms, it's important because debtors' turnover and creditors' turnover should be assessed against the credit terms. So for example, if debtors are taking an average 34 days to pay us back, and the credit terms we offer them is 30 days, then we can see that they've exceeded the terms we've provided to them, and it's unsatisfactory. We need to employ some strategies to improve this. Sometimes there's penalties for exceeding credit terms. There can be interest, but only if it's stipulated on the invoice or the contract. So when I sell something, I need to tell them, or I need to have it written down, that if you exceed the credit terms, then there will be interest or a late fee. You can't simply decide to charge a late fee or an interest if it's not stipulated in the beginning. Otherwise, if they are exceeding credit terms, you can threaten to remove credit facilities. We talked about this before. Or simply the customer will have a reduction in credit rating. So in the future, they will have trouble buying things on credit from other people. Lastly, we're looking at creditors' turnover. It's average creditors times 365 days over credit purchases. This one measures the average number of days it takes for a business to pay their creditors. So usually you would like to pay your creditor within the credit terms provided. So if they give you 30 days, you should aim to pay them within 30 days in case they have a stipulated late penalty fee, or they might stop providing stock on credit to you, or you might get a bad credit rating. Now, unless they provide an incentive to pay earlier with a discount. So this means that you want to pay within the credit terms. This is probably worded not that well, but what it's saying is that you wouldn't want to pay too earlier. So if they say if you pay within 7 days you get a discount, then instead of just paying within the 30 days, you want to make sure you pay within 7 days, or at least a part of the debt, because you'll get a discount as an incentive. What's interesting is that businesses actually should not pay early unless there's a discount, because if they give you 30 days to pay and there's no discount to pay early, there really isn't a reason to pay within 5 days, because the business could actually be using the cash to invest within the business more effectively. They could be buying stock to sell themselves. They could be meeting other more urgent debts. They could be spending on other things that are more urgent or can earn money for them. So as long as you pay within the credit terms, it's fine. Now, we're going to look at the cash cycle. It's basically the debtor's turnover plus the stock turnover. In this example, if the debtor's turnover is 24 days and we add a stock turnover of 15 days, the cash cycle will be 39 days. At the same time, the creditor's turnover for the business might be 35 days, and the credit terms offered by creditors is 30 days. So you can see that looking at our turnover, we are actually exceeding the terms offered by creditors. So we're taking longer to pay them back, and you can see that it's probably because of the cash cycle. So the business is taking 39 days to sell its stock and then receiving funds from their debtors. This affects the days it takes from purchasing stock and paying the creditors back. But you do have to keep in mind, now, even though it's taking us 39 days to sell stock and then collecting cash from debtors, The creditors turnover is a little shorter, so we have to take into consideration of cash sales that a business makes, which eliminates the time taken to wait for receipts from debtors. And finally, assessing liquidity, you also would like to look at the budgeted cash flow statement or the cash flow statement itself to analyse liquidity. It will show all the expected cash inflows and outflows and indicates whether the business will be able to meet its cash obligations for the coming year. So cash is the most important current asset, and the cash flow statement will show all the details of the inflows and outflows. And that's the end of the lesson. Thank you.